Greetings all for RMS 601 here. And for the first time on a channel, welcome aboard a ship. Which ship, you may ask? Well, courtesy of the developers of the ongoing video game in development Titanic Honor and Glory, we are aboard off the coast of Italy today. Yes, the HMHS Britannic. Yes, coming to Steam over the weekend was the new game. You can think of this as a technology demonstrator for Titanic Honor and Glory. It is called Britannic, Patroness of the Mediterranean. Britannic, for those of you who are unaware, was the third and last example of the Olympic-class ocean liners. It was built by Harland & Wolff in Belfast, Ireland. It was laid down in November of 1911, eventually launched in February of 1914. I'm 100 years ahead of myself here. Completed December 1915 and then put into service as a hospital ship, not as the ocean liner was intended to be on December 23, 1915. Britannic would be lost just short of 1 year later on November 21, 1916. Off the coast of Greece in the Kea Channel, where it had struck a mine and sank in about 55 minutes. Unfortunately, it did lead to the loss of 36 people, I believe, in the sinking. However, what we have here today is the first opportunity that we mere mortals have to dive into a very high-fidelity model of an Olympic-class ocean liner on the computer and walk around the thing. Now, this game is not really a fully fledged game. This is more so a technology demonstration of what the Titanic Honor and Glory team intend to do with their full version of the game based on the Titanic. However, the sort of modeling work that we'll see here aboard Britannic is going to be very indicative of what we're going to see on board Titanic eventually when we do get the full version of this game, which remains in development and has been in development for a number of years now. There's really not a whole lot we can do on board Britannic. We can't really go inside the ship in an extensive manner. Most of the interior of the ship has not been modeled, and it's impossible for us to walk inside the ship from here on the exterior view. However, what we can do here is just walk around the open decks here and just take an overall survey of what's going on board. We're walking forward on the starboard side here, and I guess we can start on the bridge here. This is the navigation bridge where from the ship would be commanded. We're at a stop here just anchored off the coast of Italy actually, but as we go into the bridge here, you can see how they've got everything modeled in here. Nothing is interactive. We can't drive the ship or anything. I do hope that eventually we'll be able to drive either this ship or command the Titanic in the full version of that game, but what we have here looks absolutely tremendous. Just from a visual perspective, everything looks unbelievably well done. And remember, this is basically just a tech demonstrator, this whole game, so whatever they're able to do, either in further development of this title or in further development of the eventual Titanic Honor and Glory game, it's going to be an improvement on this, which means hold on, because it's going to be one of the most extraordinary things that you're ever going to get the chance to see in the whole history of video gaming. Also, this, to my knowledge, is the first time that anybody has tried to render a historical event in this fidelity in a video game. I mean, we are aboard the Britannic. It was the last of the Olympic-class ocean liners, and as you can see, it looks unbelievably good. I mean, these guys are historians in their own rights. They have done hundreds of man-years combined in total research between their team, looking into the history of the Olympic-class ocean liners, their engineering, their construction, their service history. Of course, all of this very important to reconstructing the sinking of the Titanic, but also some of that work went into reconstructing the sinking of the Britannic, which is another thing that we can experience in this game as well, albeit in a different mode. We will not be striking a mine here in this video and sinking, but let's just appreciate this for what it is. We'll take a little walk across the exterior decks of the ship and we'll just take a look at things. It's absolutely extraordinary to see all of this here, and it's given me some flashbacks to the mid-90s with the legendary video game, basically the only video game that was somewhat faithful to rendering an Olympic-class ocean liner of any sort, but Titanic Adventure Out of Time. That was a video game on Windows and Mac at the time that put you in the role of being a government agent aboard Titanic on the night it sank, and you had to interview people and find things to piece together basically something that would stop World War I from happening. So it was a very fictional game, but it took place aboard the Titanic, and what an incredible setting for any sort of story, be it fictional or very much real, in terms of the things that we now know about that night aboard Titanic, as well as the things that we know about Britannic here. But that was basically the only time that we had the chance to walk around an Olympic-class ship in a video game until now. So welcome aboard Britannic, and again, we'll just go on a little bit of a tour here. Obviously, the navigation bridge, this is where, quite obviously, the helm is, and where the ship would be commanded from. You'd have your helmsman standing here, and then you'd have a couple officers stationed on the bridge for monitoring things. These devices over here, these are telegraphs, basically. They send messages down to the engine room, and then the guys working down in the boiler rooms and the engine room will make their adjustments so that you get the engine speeds that you want, and they'll make sure that we've got sufficient steam pressure and fire temperature and all kinds of things to give the ship the power that it needs when the crew demands it. Obviously, we've got our commands here for the port starboard engines. We've got different commands here for other areas on the ship in terms of letting tugs know what we need them to do. This would turn lights on the exterior of the ship. I believe that'd be used to signal tugs or other vessels in the area. And then, of course, moving back here, we have the enclosed section of the wheelhouse with doubling of the helm here. And then we have controls back here for the ship's onboard radios. This would be for communicating down into the boiler and engine rooms, things like that. So basically a telephone system for voice communications between the navigation bridge and the important areas of the ship in terms of the propulsion. We do have a clock on the wall, which is operable, as you can see. It is ticking ever so slightly there. Seems to be an accurate clock. That's cool. Just coming up to noon here. And then other areas here, this door does not open. Not sure if we'll ever get to the point where that door is openable on this particular ship, on this particular game, but you can see we've got a chart room, a navigating room. We do have a schematic view of the ship, which is partially readable, at least. We can't zoom or anything with our depth of field, to my knowledge, so we can't really get in close and read that, but you can see the general disposition of everything, where the engines are, where the boiler rooms are, and basically where every major space is on board the ship. Very, very cool. And like I said, lots of flashbacks here to Adventure at a Time, about 25 years ago now. We'll walk down here to the port wing of the bridge. Again, all of this, you'd have these exterior views for either taking measurements with the sextant. You wanted to sight the sun or sight the stars at night for navigation. And of course, if you're maneuvering close to shore, or docking, undocking, things like that, you get a better sight line through these little wing houses here, so you can see over the side a bit, see where the tugs are, if they're coming on board, where the pier is, things like that. So very, very cool that we can see all of these areas here. I believe these would be controls for either, well, one of them is probably for the navigational light, which is mounted to the roof here. Another one may be, it's maybe a whistle control here, so you could sound the ship's whistles from out here for signaling, obviously. That's cool. If we go up top, on top of the deck house here, another repetition of, I believe this is compass, to be able to see where you are. Very nice. And then all of our ventilation work for our, these are big downdraft turbines. I believe these would be electric turbines for enhanced ventilation down through the, obviously right here, this would be an uptake for the boiler room exhaust. So all the boilers down at the bottom of the ship here. Obviously, these are the uptakes that terminate here in the tops of the funnels there for exhausting all of that heat and smoke from the fires that are boiling all the water to generate power for the engines. Of course, electrical power as well, but looking down through there, you can see that this is a hollowed-out cavity that goes straight down to the bottom of the ship through its whole height, and, of course, that would lead down into the boiler rooms. And, of course, you got the funnel there. 4 of them here on the Olympic-class ships. Very cool. And then another reiteration of all of that grid work going down into the bottom of the ship. Absolutely marvelous to see all this stuff up here. And you aft on the top of the deck houses. You get little hints of things that are inside. These would be public areas aboard the ship. And you even get these little blurbs here to tell you about what you're looking at. So, structure forward to the ground staircase dome housing contains Britannic's forward elevator machinery. So obviously the ships had elevators for public use, for crew use as well. So elevator machinery would be housed inside there. Obviously the big winches for operating those electrically powered elevators would be in here. This would be the roof for the grand staircase, which was never fully realized on board Britannic as we saw it, but had Britannic seen service as an ocean liner, we would have had the grand staircase inside here. There's a dome over it, and then the exterior panel here for letting the light in, and also I believe these hatches could be open for extra ventilation if they needed. Very cool. Second funnel, with basically a reiteration of the similar architecture that we had on the first funnel. Obviously, this would be another boiler casing up through here for the exhaust of the boilers. And then we terminate the forward deck house back here at midship for the most part. There's no little stairwell here. So we'll go back forward and we'll climb down the way we came. There we go. And through here. Yep, well, Britannic's plans indicate this room is for a senior officer. A lone tub can be found on the wreck that is not indicated on any plans. So, interesting. So, there it is. There's a little bathtub in there. I guess we don't know if this room were ever finished. It could have been a cabin for, well, a senior officer or perhaps even the captain, as they say, but not documented anywhere else, apparently, but it is still on the ship today, which, of course, is a wreck at the bottom of the Aegean, about 400 feet down. Britannic is actually, coincidentally, the largest ship that has ever been sunk, and it remains basically the only surviving Olympic-class liner in terms of it being largely intact, although, of course, it is a wreck. Going back to midship area here. The center platform is where the ship's compass is, this raised platform in the center. We can get up top here, jump over these cases full of life belts, or at least they're labeled as such. Go up top, another compass up here. Very cool. Up here is also where the crew could get up and take sextant measurements, things like that. Very nice. So third funnel. Jump up through here, maybe a little bit. Can we get up here is the question. Yep. Jumping over the railing. There we go. Base of the third funnel. We cannot climb any of these ladders. I've tried, can't get up there. Which, that would be a very cool view to have. It'd be a little bit hot and sooty right now, but it'd be cool to have. Can't get up there, at least not in this mode. There's a free camera mode where you can basically fly all around the ship if you want. But don't really want to do that here. I want to give you the perspective of being on board. So, aft side of the third funnel. This is the roof of the first-class smoking room would be in this area below here, but obviously it's not evident at the moment. Of course, the aft grand staircase would be slightly aft of this area. Mostly covered up under lifeboats right now. Of course, lots of lifeboats on board Britannic. The ship was not entirely finished by the time it went to sea as a hospital ship. And you can see that a lot of the lifeboats here have just been haphazardly thrown onto the deck, basically obscuring the aft grand staircase roof there. But you can see the dome underneath this housing, so that looks good. I hope we didn't just back ourselves into a corner not being able to get out of here. We well may have done that. Some of the navigation aboard the ship, particularly in these areas, is a little bit finicky. There's no way to just morph out of these places if you need to get out, as you can see. Is there any way out of here? We're going to try. We may have fallen into a black hole that we cannot escape from. See if we can get out in any sense of the imagination. Not looking quite likely. Can we? Come on. Get out of here. Maybe if we could just jump up onto the boat there, we might be able to get a better vantage point. I don't think we're getting out of here. We are stuck in an area of the deck that is completely impassable. That's unfortunate. We'll get back to this area in a moment. So anyway, we have returned to where we were. We're not going to fall into the hole again, though. Do not go through here. You'll never get out. But yes, these are where the lifeboats are, at least some of the lifeboats anyway. There are boats obviously mounted in more conventional locations along the side of the ship, as you can see there moving forward. We'll continue to go aft. We'll point out one of these. This is a big gantry davit crane system, really, that would be used for deploying the lifeboats, and you can see quite obviously that these lifeboats would have been deployed during the sinking of Britannic. Most of the boats did manage to get away, and we're sort of cheating our way up the ladder here. You're not necessarily supposed to be able to climb this ladder, I would say, but we are able to climb this one, and you can see we slowly jump our way up. We get up toward near the top of the crane, and you can just see how high up above the deck you are. It certainly would not be climbing up here in reality, but you can see just how the lifeboats are stacked up here, and a couple of powered motor launches as well. Very cool. Continue to go aft on the boat deck. We reach the aftmost section of the boat deck, and you can look over the stern section. Just below us is A deck. And then we get another information box. This stairwell, that's this stairwell right here, was not on Titanic, but was added to Britannic in the design phases and installed on the Olympic later in her career. On Titanic, you would have had to walk back forward on the boat deck to the stairwells toward the bow, and then you'd be able to get down into A deck, or you could go inside the ship, which we don't really have the ability to do here. Access the A deck promenade that way. That deck overhanging just below the boat deck, that is the A deck promenade, the exterior section of that, which also is a little bit different on Britannic than it would have appeared on Titanic or Olympic. Heading back forward, we're going to walk down to A deck, take a look at the A deck promenade, and then go down onto the forecastle deck. Down through here. So this little passageway is something that only crew would have access to, but this is the A deck here exteriorly. We're on forward starboard, and then we'll go back here. This would have been an enclosed promenade for the ocean liner configuration of Britannic, but as the hospital ship that it was, these were used as just wards for injured officers, I believe. This doorway would lead to the forward grand staircase. You can explore that space as both a hospital ship and ocean liner by navigating to it in your main menu. So that just is an allusion to the other features that we do have in this game. You are able to access some interior spaces on the ship in separate modes. You're not able just to walk in here from outside, but you can see generally what it would look like in there. And just a little ward for some casualties in here. And on Titanic and Olympic, this wall would not be here. This would be open, basically, all the way from fore to aft. Through here, back forward. And of course, on the other side of the ship, we have this space reiterated. Let's walk through over here. So heading across forward from starboard to port, and then we have the same space on the other side of the ship, quite obviously. At least you would have had a nice window view. Head back downstairs here to B deck. So we have a B deck promenade as well. Slightly shorter than the A deck. But through here, more quarters for casualties through here on both sides. Walk down to C deck, onto the well deck. Obviously an open section. This is where a lot of the equipment for loading and offloading cargo and supplies would be kept. These areas here, these lead down into the cargo holds. These canvas covers, quite obviously, would be taken off, and then they would have just basically open hatches there where they could lower cargo into the hold areas in the ship via these big cranes, obviously rated at 2.5 tons. These would be electrically powered winch-type cranes, as you can see. Titanic and Olympic also had those. And these doors, which of course we cannot open, but they would lead into some cargo hold areas as well as areas like the officers' quarters inside here. We can go up onto the forecastle. There we go. Skylights here for the officer's mess area, I believe that would have been. These vents here, these venturis. So we're getting air out of the interior of the ship. I believe this would have been the officer's quarters roof. See the hatches there that could be opened up. And then our big main anchor chains for securing this roughly 46,000-ton ship, gross registered ton anyway. Big links of chain. These are still visible on both Britannic and Titanic. Our forward windlass here. And one of our main anchors. Our forestay shackle. Those are guy wires, obviously, for supporting the mast. That's about as far forward as you can get. Look back at the whole ship there. It's a pretty surreal thing. Able to see a view like this. Nobody has seen a view quite like this since Olympic was out of service in 1935. And back up. It's as far forward and as far down we can go, outside anyway. Head back up forward, back toward the bridge area. So that's well and good. We'll head aft now and take a look at what's going on the opposite end. You can see lifeboats here. This is one of the collapsible boats. You can see the canvas sides here. This would compress down for somewhat more compact storage. Oars here, obviously. And then one of the lifeboats here would have been kept swung out just for economy of space on the deck. You can see the details here on the davits. Obviously, these could be hand cranked to lower the boats. And you just see how cluttered the deck is. The Britannic, when it was requisitioned by the Royal Navy to be used in the First World War, it wasn't quite finished yet. They rushed a few things in fitting the ship out, and one of the things was they did not have the chance to install more of these gantry davits here, which would have been electrically powered. So they just put these older style davits up here, which were also used on Olympic and Titanic, and then the ship sailed like this. If the Britannic had ever made it back from the war and gone into passenger service, they would have installed these davits here throughout the rest of the ship, and those older style davits would not be used. Down the stairwell, the exterior portion, the aft of the A-deck promenade. You can see this is all open now. This is more or less looking as it would have done had Britannic been an ocean liner. Aft grand staircase area would have been here. If you go up, this just brings you back to the boat deck, so you can also access this space, obviously, through this door and head back down. Nice, some deck chairs and things like that. Some benches, obviously these would have been there in ocean liner service as well. This area, I believe, was going to be the smoking room or something along those lines. Reading and writing room, I think. Back through here, the rear mast. And more of those electric cranes there for cargo. Back down to the B-deck area. More cargo hatches obviously covered up. More machinery. More cranes. Now this is where some of the biggest differences are evident between Britannic and either Titanic or Olympic. It's the overall configuration back here is tremendously different from what it would have been on those ships. In here we have got a structure which did not exist on Olympic or Titanic. Going down through here, these are the third class stairs accessible through here. Water fountain, that's cool. Forward slightly. through an enclosed but open area. Not entirely sure what this would have been on board this ship, but these areas did not exist on Olympic or Titanic. This was an update that was brought in for Britannic during its construction. Inside, portals. I do like how the light comes through those windows. Looks very cool. And then obviously we can't go anywhere beyond this, but this would start to get you down toward third class. Back outside, head aft. We climb up here for a second level. Again, this also did not exist on Olympic or Titanic. Using this area basically for more lifeboats. And then back up here, this is the docking bridge. This is where you could get people out to the back here to help guide the ship into port. If the sight lines from the main navigating bridge were insufficient, you could get a couple officers back here, and you've got these wings that overhang the side of the ship, so you get some different angles that they could see their way into port from. That looks good. If we head down again, back here, this little structure, which is just sort of tacked on to the top of the deck here, this was the morgue. And this is something that obviously would not have been on the ship had it gone into passenger service, but obviously being a hospital ship, you are going to have dead and dying, so eventually you need some place to keep those people, either awaiting transfer to shore or for burial at sea. You would want to make sure that you keep them away from the people who are still well enough. And obviously you can see by putting that building right at the after part of the ship, you keep unpleasantries to a minimum in terms of sights and smells. This deck house here would be the second class stairs. Can't go inside there as of yet, if ever we'll be able. Then back up top into a similarly perilous area where we were before. There's the fourth funnel, which was not fake. Actually did have a purpose. It wasn't for engine exhaust or boiler exhaust, but it was for ventilation of the lower compartments of the ship where all the machinery would have been. So that all looks well and good. Very cool. Very, very cool. It's just one of those things that, I don't know, as a kid I spent so much time reading about these ships and looking at the comparatively few pictures that survived, and obviously reading about the Titanic and what happened to it, and reading about Britannic and what happened to it, and obviously Olympic was the only ship that actually had a successful career. All seems so familiar, yet entirely novel at the same time. It's really, really surreal. Just love all the detail work that they've done. Little box there. I'm not sure what would have been stored in those boxes. Maybe flares would have been in that box, or perhaps small munitions, handguns, things like that. Definitely would have been aboard a ship of any type in this era, and still today. There you go. That's a sight. That really is a sight. I guess for me, it would be this view here. This would have been the best seat in the house. Not bad. White flag with the red cross, obviously, as a hospital ship would be flying that. That's to respect non-aggression treaties that either side in World War I would respect any ship flying that flag as a hospital ship, and it would not be considered a threat, as hospital ships were not permitted to carry ammunition or to transport active troops. The only armament that Britannic would have had would have been these little, well, I say little, but comparatively little machine guns that you can see here, one of them. And these weapons were for defensive purposes only. This would be to deter anybody trying to board the ship, anything like that. But again, not much good if you're wanting to be aggressive. But you would have, both sides would have respected that non-aggression pact, basically. If it's a hospital ship clearly marked, you will not engage it. Very, very cool. And lastly, just want to show some exterior things on the ship from off-board. Obviously, we're right here at the bow with the depth marks here in feet. So we had a draft of about 32 feet. Looking up. There she is. Anchor, the rust detail coming up through there. That's cool. You can see the texture of the steel. Obviously, all of these seams between the steel plates would be riveted. That's glorious. Of course, there's the name of the ship side there. That looks really cool. We'll pull back a bit. Look at that. That's really, really cool. And back up alongside here. Look at some of the other details that we have. You can see marks along the side. This would be a mixture of coal dust. Obviously, when coal would be loaded aboard the ship in port, it would be basically poured in through these hatches here along the sides that you can see. And obviously coal is very, very dusty and dirty, and it would make a lot of smudges along the side. It's one of the reasons why ocean liners were painted black in this era, to hide that coal dust. You can see all the detail there. That looks marvelous. Big red cross along the side. See the rivet work along the band here between C deck and D deck. That's for structural support. Basically, it's a double riveted section of hull. It's for more structural rigidity. Expansion joints also visible for the superstructure area. Heading aft a little bit more. This is the Plimsoll Line. This shows the trim of the ship visually. Obviously, we're sitting straight and level. That looks so cool. Nice. That's how we would get on board, but you see, if we try to walk up this ladder, we actually cannot enter the ship. It just goes nowhere. Back down in the water. Or eyelets here along the stern for tying onto tugs or tying up in port. Have a look at that. Such a nice job on this. And really, it's in some ways, you would consider a ship like this relatively small today compared to other cruise ships and other modern liners that exist. Of course, a ship like the Queen Mary II absolutely dwarfs this, but it's still an appreciable thing. It's 883 feet long, 47,000 tons. Nominal capacity and passenger service would have been around 2,400. So an appreciably sized ship even today. And if you've ever gotten the chance to go aboard an Iowa-class battleship, last year I got the chance to go aboard the USS New Jersey for a day, and it's comparable in size in terms of tonnage and length to an Olympic-class liner. So aboard a ship like that, you definitely recognize that they're big, and something like this, I imagine, would have felt similar in a lot of regards. Side of the hull. I love how the light scatters across here. And the contours of everything looks absolutely wonderful. Love the look of those windows on A deck and B deck in the forward section. It's amazing. Looks absolutely marvelous. Love it. Get a better angle here. There she is. Really, I've got to say, this project needs to survive, and this project needs to be seen through its completion, because this is extraordinary. Really, it is. The relatively limited capabilities that we have just in this, basically it's a demonstrator, a technical demonstrator of what these guys really hope to achieve with all of this, with their Titanic project. But honestly, something like this has real value. It has tremendous creative value. It has tremendous cultural value as well, because we're now in an era where there's nobody still alive who saw either this ship or Titanic with their own eyes. There's nobody alive who survived either one of the sinkings, obviously. So the only way that this story gets remembered is if people who know how to do things and people who have access to resources are able to retell those stories and to bring them to life in new ways that simply were not possible at the time they occurred. And I think a project like this goes a long way into keeping that story alive, both in the case of Britannic and in Titanic as well. This is a project that I think we need to get behind. And if any of you out there have the means to support this in a better way than I can, either monetarily or in terms of your reach, in terms of an audience or influence spheres that you may have, give these guys a very long look. Because this is something that's bigger than a video game, for sure. This is something that has real historical value in terms of not only just culturally, but academically as well. This is the highest fidelity recreation of a real-world historical object that anybody has ever made for the purposes of entertainment. And what I'm seeing here, just in the relatively limited capacity that we can interact with it here, this is extraordinary. It absolutely is. But there it was, a look at Britannic, Patroness of the Mediterranean, at least some parts of the game, some things that you can do here, just exploring the ship externally. And yes, let me know if you'd like to see a playthrough of the sinking. It's basically this same sort of idea. You walk around the ship as it sinks, but let me know if you'd like to see something like that as well. But just wanted to give you a look at the ship here today, from what we can see from the outside anyway. I do hope you enjoyed all of this. Until next time, Ferrari Mount 601 saying thank you very much for watching, and of course, we will see you soon.